We have a big announcement, folks, something we've been waiting on for several months, and it's now here. It's called Bella Melt. You were on it for just 1 week when you lost 3 pounds. So in the first week, you lost 3 pounds on this, right?
That is correct.
Your GLP-1 is a natural hormone that's in every single one of our bodies. And your GLP-1 lets you know if you're full. It's a satiety hormone. So when your GLP is working properly, it does help suppress your appetite as well as reduce those cravings. It's a sugar-free fast melt caramel. So what it's going to do best is it's going to reduce your sugar cravings or any other cravings you have in your body. It's going to suppress that appetite. But where Melissa got the most benefit, I think, over the last week was the L-carnitine. The L-carnitine tells your mitochondria, this is where you make, we talked about it before, this is where you produce energy in your cells. It actually tells those mitochondria to burn fat for fuel. We're noticing other people losing up to 7 pounds in the first week. 4 pounds has been about the average. As you lose weight and as you take these Bella Melts, it's going to help lower that blood sugar in your body as well.
All the information is there. MelissaHouseBG.com, MelissaHouseBG.com. Just now introducing for the first time Bella Melt with GLP-1 fast action.
Welcome to Live Up to Freedom. Thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you being here. We are live on worldviewtube.com, worldviewtube, Rumble and X account. We're also live on worldviewtube app, which, as you know, it is available on your App Store free of charge, and it will make your life a lot easier if you are a phone user like I am. We're also live on X America News on X, live on my platforms on Facebook, X, Rumble, YouTube, and Substack. I am, as always, looking at the comment sections, and I will address them to the best of my ability. I will be joined by a very special guest today. In a bit, I'm going to take a little bit of time on first segment, but he will join me. Ray, some of you, those of you who are audience of Worldview Tube are familiar with him, and those of you who are not, you'll get to know him today. Is a former or ex-MEK child soldier, fellow Iranian, and he has a pretty amazing story and heartbreaking at the same time. So he's going to join me in a bit, but before we get there, there are a few things I want to address. One of them to one of my Substackers who's almost always here, which makes me very happy, Annalise. You made a comment yesterday. I saw it, but I couldn't address it. But I cannot tell. First of all, thank you for the compliment, but I cannot tell you how many people in person or on internet have asked me, where do I get my highlights? And when I tell them I don't, it's just, I let my gray grow. They're like, what? Yeah, so yes, this is natural, and you do what I do. I think I saw the first gray on my hair a few days after my 21st birthday. And now I'm 42, so you can imagine it kind of just came with life. Hi, Lori. Good to see you from Canada. And, oh, thank you, Skid. Yes, I joined Brian House on his radio today. For those of you who missed that, you may want to go back and watch it. We mainly focused on Qatar City, which there's a Substack about it on my Substack if you want to read more details. And we also talked about the JD Vance and Megyn Kelly interview that took place last night, which I will address that on the first segment today as well. Thank you, Lori. I appreciate it. Hi, Sandra. Good to see you. You are very welcome. I will continue doing those reports on Iran, what's happening with Iran and the Iranian people, because somebody's got to do it. On YouTube, hello guys, I do see you guys on YouTube as well, and William on Facebook, good to see you. Let's do this. Thomas, do we have the JD Vance clip ready to play right now, or do we need to wait on that? Okay, no worries. So Megyn Kelly invited JD Vance on her show last night. It's a 2 hour, 17 minutes interview. And I'm sure you understand when I have to sit, like on top of everything else I do, I have to sit there and listen to 2 hours, 17 minutes of what I considered a full-on whitewash propaganda push. It was painful. I literally physically had a headache. But well, here I am. I watched it. I do suggest, at least in pieces, watch it for your own understanding of how this all works. It connects a lot of dots for you if you're watching it, if you're listening to it without the guard, you know, the pro-Republican, pro-Trump, pro-JD Vance, pro-Megyn Kelly. If you put all those guards down and listen to it, it connects a lot of dots for you. But there was a part where I specifically figured it's like 5 minutes or so that it was so clear, like the message, the question, the answer was almost disturbingly clear. And I saw a lot of people grabbing notes of that in a positive way. And I was sitting here, I'm like, okay, this cannot go on. It needs to be addressed. So we will play that and we will go over it. But the overall theme was very interesting. It was, the reason I say disturbing is that there, I stay unbiased. I stay with facts, even if I get emotional. And even with that rule of mine, which I have followed to the best of my ability for over a decade now, I couldn't. There was a point that I paused and I took a deep breath and I was like, I just can't continue. Like, I needed a break from it. And it seems like we have the video ready. So let's listen to this 5 minutes, and then I'm going to literally dissect it when we come back. Feel free to dissect it on the comment section yourselves too. Let's take a listen.
Is trying to decide right now what to do about Iran. And that's a tough one too, because you actually have a split, you know, within the Republican Party, as you do on so many things, because Republicans love to disagree with each other, unlike the Democrats.
Yes, we do. And I love that. I love the diversity. I love the dynamism.
I think it's great too. But just how aggressive should we be with Iran? There's a very large faction of the Republican Party that says, what are we talking about Iran for? What do you mean? America first. Let's focus on our own problems, affordability, all these things.
Sure.
And they think President Trump spent too much time focused on overseas issues anyway, and they definitely don't want to get involved in Iran. And then there's a larger faction, another faction that is also large, that's more neocon-y, that says we missed an opportunity, we let those protesters down, you know, the window's closing, we should be more aggressive militarily there right now. Where do you fall?
Well, so first of all, I hear the criticisms out there that the administration is too focused on foreign policy. I just have to defend the president. I don't think that's true. I think that certainly when you're the president of the United States, you do have to conduct foreign policy. We're the most powerful country in the world. But what I see him every day, he's laser focused on how do we make the American people more prosperous and more secure in their own country. That's what our immigration policy is about, which we've taken a raft of crap over. That's what our crime policy is about. That's, you know, even the foreign policy stuff, much of the president's foreign policy has been focused on reshoring industry, on using tariffs to force people to reinvest in the United States of America. So the global criticism, I just don't think people, look, the president is going to have to engage in foreign policy, but this president, I think, is much more focused on the home front than any president in my lifetime. And he's gotten a lot, I mean, look, $18 trillion in new investment. The country's finally starting to reindustrialize.
$18 trillion from other countries who are investing into the United States
of America. That has been the exact opposite. For our entire lives, Megyn, it has been American money building factories overseas. Now it's other money coming in to build factories for American workers and the American people. That's big. By the way, we're not going to see the full benefits of that for years, maybe even a decade, but that's the sort of investment in the country that really pays long-term dividends. Now, Iran specifically, like, what should we do with Iran? Okay, a couple of things. First of all, it's the president's decision. He will ultimately decide how we handle this particular Iranian situation, just like he decided on Operation Midnight Hammer. What he has been very clear on, if you go back to 2015, 2016, 2021, 2025, the president has said consistently, we can't let these people have a nuclear weapon. Now, why? Why does that matter to America? Number one, the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism. Like, you think it's bad when we have a domestic terror attack where a couple of people die, and you're right. What happens when the same people who are shooting up a mall or driving airplanes into buildings have a nuclear weapon? That is unacceptable. And it's not just them, because if the Iranians get a nuclear weapon, you know who gets a nuclear weapon like the next day? The Saudi Arabians, and then somebody else in the Gulf Arab state. And so you have nuclear proliferation on a global scale. The biggest threat to security in the world is a lot of people having nuclear weapons. So what the president has said is Iran's not going to get a nuclear weapon. We're going to work with China and Russia and any country, whether they're a friend or whether we're a little more competitive, to try to draw down the amount of nuclear weapons that exist in the world. I think that's the most important thing you could do for peace and stability. And the question is, what do you do to enforce that red line? Okay, Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. That is the stated policy goal of the President of the United States. It's so funny. Sometimes you have people who are saying, well, the president's too belligerent. And then sometimes you have people who say, well, the president, he's talking about diplomacy and he's talking about negotiating with the Iranians. We shouldn't negotiate. We should just bomb them. What the president's going to do is he's going to keep his options open. He's going to talk to everybody. He's going to try to accomplish what he can through non-military means. And if he feels like the military is the only option, then he's ultimately going to choose that option. I'm not, obviously, even if I knew what we were going to do, I would not tell you and your many millions of listeners. But I feel like people have to remember that this is not about, like, look, I grew up in the Iraq generation. I literally, I enlisted in the Marine Corps as an idealistic young kid right after 9/11. I went to Iraq in 2000, or I enlisted in 2003, I went to Iraq in 2005. I am very cognizant that the Middle East leads to quagmires. Trust me, so is the President of the United States, and we're hearing that. We know that's out there, but more importantly, we know the history, and the President he has no interest in repeating the history of Iraq. What he does want to make sure is that there's a totally separate issue, which is you don't let crazy people get nuclear weapons and then lead to a nuclear arms race all over the world.
Okay. Lori, I love your analysis. I literally, the second, third, fourth time, it became blah, 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 blah. Exactly, Lori. Let me break this down as fast and as clear I can do. Number one, did you all notice that one very major word was missing from this whole long answer of J.D. Vance? Islam, or even radical Islam. When you see crazy people shooting at our malls, you say it's bad, and you're right, but imagine if we give crazy people nuclear bomb. Did you realize how there was no mention of these crazy people are Muslim? Or with their own narrative, they're lone wolf Islamist jihadists or radical Muslims? That was completely erased from the script. Did you love that? Because I did. Second thing, the question was pretty clear. I said this on Brannon's radio as well. Megyn Kelly asked specifically, some are saying we let the protesters down. But did you also notice that JD said everything and anything except any hint or mention of the revolution taking place in Iran? The fact that as of right now, probably over 50,000 Iranians have been killed, over 160 of them were kids and teenagers, or any mention of the fact that we did say we're coming to help and we didn't show up. Did you just love the fact that none of that was any part of J.D. Vance's answer? And then it goes further to show that the PR campaign, well, some people say this and some people say this, but through tariffs and this and that, we have brought historic number of investments in America. JD, I would like to see the receipt for that because, you know, I dig deep and I wasn't able to verify your claim. But then it got even more interesting. So you're telling me you know the history. He said referring to himself and President Trump, we know the history, we read the history, and we're not going to let what happened in Iraq happen again. Number one, thank you for whitewashing September 11. Thank you for sitting there and saying that your enlistment for Iraq that turned into disaster in Iraq is tied to September 11. I don't know who's writing your answers. If these are your own answers, you just proved my point. From the day your name was dropped as the running mate, because from that day I said, wrong choice. I don't trust this man at all. If somebody's writing your answers, you should probably tell them to be a little more careful when they connect these dots into favor of you and Trump while stepping on so many people's blood, from September 11 to those who were killed inside America by the Islamic jihadists to those who died in Iran under fake promises that never arrived. So you just spit on way too many people's blood to try to promote yourself and President Trump as some people who know the history and read the history. Now, let me give you a historical lesson. If you claim to know history, number one, it is historically proven that Iranians are not Iraqis. So for you to claim that you're not doing any military action against Islamic Republic of Iran's regime because you don't want to repeat the mistake of Iraq just tells me that you don't know anything about history of Iran, Iranians, or Persia. Number two, historically, it's been proven, said by President Trump himself during his first term, there is no way of negotiating with Islamic Republic of Iran's regime. So why would you sit there and say President Trump going to try to talk to everybody and resolve this through diplomacy? If you're relying on history, history has proven there's no negotiating with these people. So again, I have never trusted JD. I don't focus on him much because it's not needed at the moment, but this very interview required. Now, let me also say one thing about the way Megyn Kelly phrased that question. Missy, those of us out here who say we have let protesters down in Iran, I'm not a neocon at all. I'm against wars, actually. For you to generalize all of us to say there are the neocons saying we should go bomb them, we're just humans. Unlike you, we don't have a fit narrative that matches the check we receive as income. We follow human behavior. We try our best to be part of human society. We say if you made a promise, you should show up. Now, if you're not going to show up, at least don't erase them. J.D. Vance sat there for 6 straight minutes and erased the blood of tens of thousands of innocent people who we promised 23 days ago to go and help. For anybody in any shape or form who's going to say, be patient, help is coming, listen to my words. I don't care if this help ever comes. From day one, I said it won't come. So this isn't about you protecting Trump and covering up and coming up with excuses for Trump. This is about the lack of decency from J.D. Vance to at least acknowledge the number of people killed, to at least acknowledge that there is even a revolution. He is stuck to the talking point of nuclear weapon. To him, those who died don't even exist. And you want to tell me J.D. Vance is this church boy, good conservative Christian guy? You don't know the meaning. If you're going to defend these sentences, you don't know the meaning. Last but not least, if we get crazy people nuclear bomb, imagine. I'll repeat as a broken record. Receipt is on my Substack. I don't have time to go over it. How come you're okay with crazy people such as Pakistan to have 170 nuclear bomb? Why is that okay? If we got problems with crazy people having nuclear bomb, how come that crazy people, proven Pakistani gangs in Europe and America, kidnapping, grooming, raping, selling Western girls, Pakistani bombers and shooters as jihadists, Pakistani government to this day, historically not a single leader has finished their term because they were either assassinated or convicted of some sort of crime and put in prison. You don't consider them crazy? So again, a lot of people don't pay attention because the moment you see J.D. Vance, everybody's J.D. Vance, J.D. Vance, J.D. Vance. Whatever comes out of his mouth, nobody's listening. I am. And shame on you. Shame on you for spitting a bunch of lies and erasing tens of thousands of innocent people who have been killed and murdered by hands of the very crazy people you call crazy, we call murderer. So, my fellow Americans, in any shape or form, it's your rights, it's your freedoms to vote for whomever you want. But if you're cheering at 2028 JD Vance, you're part of the problem. You are so gullible that you think just because one never Trumper who called Trump all sort of names, one day woke up and said, yay, go Trump, is a genuine leader for this country. We got to go take our first ad break. When we come back, Ray's going to join us, and we're going to continue talking about the swamp and the broken promises of the Republican Party right here in America. Don't go anywhere, guys.
Life is too short to spend a single moment spinning in laundry worries. Take a load off your mind with the all-new Norwex Powerzyme laundry detergent. This natural detergent harnesses the power of enzymes and plant-based surfactants to leave fabrics fresh and clean without fillers, brighteners, synthetic fragrances, bleach, or harsh chemicals. So go ahead, have your cake and eat it too. More than ever, stressful stains have met their match. Powerzyme's fast-acting enzymes break down organic substances while natural surfactants loosen locked-in dirt and oil, removing residue, stains, and odors with ease. With 91% bio-based ingredients, this dermatologist-tested hypoallergenic formula is suitable for sensitive skin types and delivers a safe and effective clean that won't harm you or the planet's waterways. Less time spent worrying about laundry means you can focus on what truly matters. Norwex Powerzyme Laundry Detergent. Discover the power of nature and load up on confidence.
تو برام آرامشی تو دست نمالشی
کاشکی دلم رسوا بشه دریا بشه این دو چشم پرآبم
Okay, to JD Vance, Megyn Kelly, Trump himself, anybody else. You can try to erase them. We won't let you. We won't. Today, just so you know, after every ad break, we're going to play 2 minutes of these I will personally guarantee I have never, I stood on that we should not get involved. The 12 Days War from December 27, 2025, I said, United States of America shall not get involved. I'll still say the same thing. So this is not a cry of come help my people. This is the fact that I will not let you erase their memory, their names, their faces, nor their existence, because it fits your diplomacy better. Every single day we'll say their names, we'll show their faces, we play their happy dance videos. Even if that means I should do this for the rest of my life, so be it. No one gets to erase their names and their existence just on their pretendance of diplomacy. You want to negotiate with this regime, that's on you. You take that to your grave. But the rest of us over here, we still have dignity. Regardless of our blood, our race, our background, there is dignity left in this world that you cannot take away from us. And while I'm at it, mainstream media, alternative media, left or right, if I send their faces with Gaza names, are you gonna cry for them? Because I'm pretty sure you will. But that's okay. We neither need or want your cries, because enough mothers and fathers are sobbing all day long in Iran. And we hear their cries. And we will make sure their voices are heard within our small or big platforms. On that note, let's bring on Ray Torabi. As I said, some of you are familiar with him on Worldview Tube because he joined Brannon House on the rest of the platform. He is a fellow Iranian. He is in Germany. He is a former MEK child soldier with an amazing story and a voice that he's trying to use to bring awareness, not only about what's happening in Iran, but also what is happening with MEK inside Western countries, specifically United States of America's Republican parties. Hi, Ray. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Annie.
Sorry, I was trying to be way less angry on my show today, but I have reached my limit of the silence and the blinding people to lies that has reached its way all the way to JD Vance now. So I don't know how much of the discussion on the first segment you heard, but is there anything you want to add to what I said, or should we dive in?
Just one word is I completely agree with you that the reality is that over 50,000 innocent Iranians, men, women, and children, have been killed in recent weeks by the Islamic Republic. The majority of them took to the streets because the U.S., specifically President Trump, gave a promise that he would help, that he would show support, that help is on the way. And with them thinking that they have the backing of the U.S., they took to the streets to demand change and to demand the end of the Islamic Republic. I know for a fact that if there was no promise, they wouldn't dare do so, because they know which type of regime that they are dealing with. We've witnessed this regime for the past 47 years. Our parents, the previous generations have told us the stories of how they took to the streets in the 80s, and they were met with ruthless, brutal suppression. So we were aware of that, but we thought, and when I say we, I speak for the Iranian people on your show right now, because I'm in touch with a lot of specifically youth in Iran. We thought that we would have that support. Unfortunately, until this moment, there has been no support, and there has been no help, and there has just been empty promises. And so, yeah, the reality is that the Iranian people took to the streets in the tens of millions, and they said that, look, the only delegation, the only true representative of the Iranian people that any international delegation should be sitting down with and speaking to and dealing with from now on is the delegation of His Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi. And this should be known to everyone around the world. So instead of J.D. Vance or Donald Trump or anyone else, Marco Rubio or anyone else sitting, or the European countries sitting down with Abbas Araghchi, the foreign minister of Iran, they should be sitting down with Reza Pahlavi and speaking about, talking about the future of Iran. So I just wanted to add that at the end of the day, if you don't want to get involved in the internal politics of a country, that's okay. But once you do get involved and you give that promise, then you have responsibility, and you also need to be accountable. But I personally think that this is not the end. I think that a lot of great things will be happening in the very near future for Iran. Me, along with most of my friends, we're very hopeful.
I 100% agree with you, Ray. That's the thing. I've been doing series like literally. I think this is the second or third week where I ask a fellow Iranian to join me on the show, and we all been saying the same thing. I had Mariam on my show 2 days ago, and she said it. I've said it. You've said it. Here's the bottom line: this is the last battle. It doesn't matter who does what. It doesn't matter which country helps or not. I don't think they understand this is the last battle. I don't think the history is taking notes. And Washington Post, of all places, put out a piece saying this is the moment that Trump will choose how his name is going to go down in history of Iranian people. Even Washington Post is catching up with the fact that this is it. This is where history is being made. And I want to be very clear. I'm not angry because I was expecting the help to show up and it didn't. No, I'm angry because, first of all, as you said, if you don't want to be involved, that's completely fine. There are so many other countries who have stayed quiet about it. But don't come out making a claim that you're not about to deliver. And then when we ask you about that, you gaslight us by completely erasing the revolution in your interview. For J.D. Vance to say that, sit there and not even mention the revolution or the uprising or the people who were killed and just make this about a nuclear deal is an insult, not just to Iranians, but to Americans. Because he's representing the American people. The world is watching J.D. Vance talk about Iran, and he narrows it down into a nuclear talk. That's a bad look for America. That's a terrible look for administration. So that's where my anger is, but I agree with you. We're not done. This isn't over. One way or another, this revolution will succeed. It would be fantastic if we had international help, but if we don't have it, so be it. Iranians have survived so much in over 3,000 years of history that this can be happening as well. Now, with that being said, since you said it, you are one of the best examples of explaining the system of this regime, because you yourself were born inside Evin prison and spent the first year of your life in Evin prison. And my audience is very familiar with Evin prison because I have talked about it. So let's pick up from there. You tell my audience about the first year of your life, your mother and father's experience under this regime, and then we go from this regime to the replacement regime that Republicans think is a good idea.
So I was born in May 1982. At the time, the Islamic Republic had the leader of the Islamic Republic, Khomeini, had issued a fatwa claiming that anyone who opposes the Islamic Republic should be arrested, tortured, and even executed. My parents were at that time supporters of the MEK, which was at that time a legitimate opposition organization against the Islamic Republic. It had a lot of popular support at that time. When I was born, my parents were fugitives, so they were in hiding. About a month after I was born, we tried to escape Iran through the Turkish border. Eventually, we got caught by Turkish patrol, and we were handed over to the Iranian authorities. My mom was imprisoned. She was sentenced to 5 years in prison, and my father almost 7 years. And so I spent the first year of my life in Evin prison with my mother. and at the time she was 20 years old. So this is like a 20-year-old girl with a newborn child in Iran's most notorious prison, where at that time it was completely overcrowded. We were there wasn't even any room in the cells. Like initially when we were, and all of this, my mom has explained told me these stories, that there was no room in the cells, and we were just for the first week just laying on a blanket in the corridors, and eventually they took us to one cell, which was basically, it was designed, the cell, for 6 to 8 people, but there was over 20 people in that cell. Um, Eventually, after 1 year, my mom decided that it's not, prison is not a place for a child. And I should let you know that I wasn't the only child in prison at that time. We were almost 20 children, 20 infants, from just a few months old to 2, 3 years old. And there was, at that time, there was a boy. He was 2.5, and his mother had been executed. And he was in prison with his mom. His mother was executed. But they didn't have a family for him at that time. They didn't know who his family was. So this boy stayed like almost 6 to 8 months after his mother was executed in prison, and the other female inmates were taking care of him. And eventually they took him out to a foster family or something like that. I don't exactly remember. So yeah, this is the Islamic Republic that I was born into, let's say.
Yes, and that's the thing. We are kind of close in age. I was born in '83, and I mean, you've seen it. We've heard the stories, and the first time in America I ever told people that, first of all, there's no juvie. Like when I was arrested at 11 for going to a party when boys and girls were all at a party, doing nothing major, just dancing, eating, talking. They took me to the same detention center as the adult people were there. The Americans like looked at me like, huh? What? You were arrested at age 11 and then you were taken to detention center and then it was with the adult. I'm like, oh, that's not the worst. You can literally be born in prison. They couldn't even wrap their head around the idea, wait, okay, what do you mean you can be born? I'm like, no, if a woman is pregnant and gets arrested, sentenced to prison, she's going to go through the full term in prison. She's going to give birth in prison hospital, and then she's going to raise her baby inside prison for as long as she's alive, or as long as she has the sentence to finish. That one basic fact. And we both know, Ray, it hasn't ended. They haven't changed that. Yesterday, some kid was born in prison somewhere in Iran. The fact that that exists, and in Western countries or on their human rights watches, we want to claim that this regime is coming to a negotiation table to change their ways. That is absurd. These are babies. You were a baby that was born in prison. And if your mother wasn't released a year after, you would probably grow up until I think it's 8-7 is when they take the kid out of prison, out of their parents' guardianship from prison. You could have pretty much spent your first 7 years in prison, right?
My mom was in prison for 5 years. I mean, at the end of the day, I was lucky enough to have a grandmother outside of prison.
Oh, you had you had a guardian family member. Okay.
Yeah. I had someone outside prison, and then so she sent me to stay with my grandmother. But there was, like you said, there were other children who were born in prison. And one thing to mention is I think it's very important that for so many years and this is since the presidency of Khatami, that people are chanting or they're claiming that the regime, the Islamic Republic, has reformed, has changed, has become better in so many ways regarding human rights and its policies and so on. But the massacre that happened in the previous weeks proves that not only have they not changed at all, but they've become even more ruthless, because they've realized that over 47 years, no one has ever truly stood against them and stood up to them. And they realize that when it comes to their internal issues, no country is willing to get involved. And so the fact that we talk about what happened, let's say 30, 40 years ago, it doesn't mean that, okay, now things have changed. No, what the situation that we sit in today, as we're speaking, there are tens of thousands of protesters who have been arrested. Many of them are, their families do not know their whereabouts. I see posts every day. I see pictures. I read stories every single day about people who have gone missing since the protests, and their family do not know their whereabouts, or horrific stories from young women, young girls who are even under 18 in these detention centers, who are asking their families to bring them birth control pills. Do you understand? Like,
Yes. Oh no, you can say it on this show. They are raping our girls.
we are Iranians. Like I told you, I spent the first year of my life in prison. I'm used to pain. I'm used to hardship. I'm used to seeing death and destruction and killing and blood. And I grew up in this life, unfortunately. But the scenes and the stories and everything that I've witnessed firsthand through my friends who sent me videos and pictures and talked about their what they experienced in the past weeks. I've never experienced in my entire life, and it's so overwhelming, and sometimes it's emotional, you know. So to anyone who thinks that this regime has changed, you're fooling yourself, you know. And then before you were talking about JD Vance. Yeah, if you want to go sit down with the Ayatollahs and shake their hands, just understand that they have the blood of over 100,000 people on their hands, and you're shaking the hands of murderers for your benefit or for your interest, which you think, you know. At the end of the day, you cannot change a snake through negotiations. You can't negotiate a snake to not be a snake anymore. And 47 years is the testament to that. Like, what do these diplomats and politicians think that they have? What new card are they playing? What new tactic, what new policy are they implementing that they think that all the people before them, the 47 years, that no one has been able to sit down and truly negotiate this regime into changing its behavior when it comes to its export of terrorism and funding and supporting its proxies in the Middle East and around the world, when it comes to its nuclear program, and when it comes to its human rights violations inside of Iran and outside of Iran, outside of Iranian borders, which they've carried out terrorist activities outside of Iran borders. What makes them think that they can do something that the rest of the delegations and countries before them have not been able to accomplish? Do you understand that? It's a negotiating. It's an illusion. It's negotiating the terrorist regime, the Islamic Republic, into changing its behavior is an illusion. You're just buying it more time to pursue its nuclear weapons programs. You're buying it more time just to spread its support for its proxies and give life again to Hezbollah and Hamas, which the Israeli government took out very, very beautifully in the past 1 or 2 years after the horrific events of October 7th. So you're just buying more time for the terrorists to do what they've been doing for 47 years. So I see this as a waste of time, and I also see it like exactly how you said it. I see it as a big as a big disrespect to the Iranian people who you promised that you would send help to and support.
Exactly, and that's the thing. It's that situation of people might misunderstand us, which is okay. I'm misunderstood all day long, but it is important and it's crucial to mention that what we say is not out of expectation. Though I'm an American citizen, I don't expect the American government to go and help Iranian people. What I do expect is at least to be honest about it. If I'm ever diagnosed with cancer and I go to my doctor and my doctor says, here's a great course of treatment, we're gonna give you, you know, whitening for your teeth, I'll be like, doc, where did you get your degree? I got cancer. I don't need white teeth. This is what they're doing. They have acknowledged the cancer. They have done the diagnosis, but then they're sitting there no, I didn't mean to rhyme that in, but they're whitewashing the issue. They're pretending there is no cancer, and we just need to get rid of the nuclear weapons and the process, and everything's going to be good to go. Guys, we are going to go over today because we need to go over, and I have approval from control room to go over. So let's do this. Let's take one more ad break. You know, I need to take a sip of my drink. And then when we come back, we're going to dive into the other side of what Republicans are looking at. Instead of cancer, they think this is the solution to the problem, which is MEK. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Well, hello everybody. It's Annie Cyrus. Welcome to my art studio where all the magic happens. This is the station for painting, and that is the station for all the resin art I do. If you want to check out my art, all you gotta do is go to lutfstudio.com. But I'm sure, or at least I hope, I'll see you at lutfstudio.com.
ادامه داری فقط داره هم تو شبیه منی و شبیه خودتم میدونی بد جوری
May their names and memory stays in all of our hearts and inspire and encourage us to do the right thing and not to bend over backward to tyranny and seek justice and fight oppression. Either we face it today or others face it today while we get to where we will face it. Guys, the full-length video is about 8 minutes, 41 seconds. It is available on my X, Facebook, and Substack. As I said, we'll continue playing the shorter clips, but if you want to see the rest of them or know their names, you can find them on my platforms. I posted it this morning. Let's get back to the discussion. So, Ray, we achieved your birth, your prison experiences, first steps. I can't even imagine, right? I can't even, regardless of whatever your mom or dad's decisions were, as a mother, I'm not a mother, but as a woman, I can't imagine to watch my baby's first steps to be taken inside a prison cell, knowing it is what it is. But you have survived, clearly. You have survived and you are a thriver today. Now let's go to when you guys got to Iraq and joined MEK.
So after my father was released from prison, we realized that my parents realized that we can't have a normal life in Iran anymore because they were ex-political prisoners, and anywhere that we went, my father couldn't get a job. My mother also couldn't get a job. At school, I was constantly harassed and bothered by the teachers, who were all supporters of the Islamic Republic. So eventually, we decided to leave Iran, and this time we smuggled our way to Iraq, where at that time the MEK had established military bases in Iraq. They were completely backed and funded by Saddam Hussein, who at that time Iran and Iraq were in a war with each other. And so Saddam's policy was the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And so we joined the ranks of the MEK in Iraq. Of course, me and the other children, we were around 700, 800 children. And we were kept in daycares and in dormitories during the week, and we were only able to see our parents 1.5 days on the weekends. This was for a couple of years until 1991, when the first Persian Gulf War happened and the U.S. attacked Iraq, where at that time the leader of the MEK, Masoud Rajavi, came to the decision that this place is not for children anymore. So all the children were separated from the parents, including me, and we were sent to Western countries. We were smuggled out of Iraq and to Western countries. And I was smuggled initially to the US, and then from there smuggled to Canada, where I stayed with a couple of foster families.
Okay, hold on. Let me
Ottawa and
stop you
Toronto.
there. Let me stop you there because this is important. We can't just say we need to. So you were smuggled first to US and then from US to Canada. And how old are you right now when you're smuggled to US?
I was 9 years old.
9 years
Initially,
old?
when I was smuggled from Iraq to the US, I was 9 years old.
9 years old. To my lovely audience, we have a 9-year-old boy, Iranian boy, smuggled from Iraq into United States of America, and then smuggled from US to Canada. This is what we call child trafficking inside United States of America. He didn't smuggle himself. He can verify he was smuggled by MEK members, correct, Ray?
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things that US, the government, Republicans, former CIA, former military people like to cover up is MEK has and still does smuggle and traffic children through US, and they have never faced charges, nor have they ever faced any court for doing so. And I want to make it clear, Ray wasn't the one and only. Well, let me tell you, my audience, you weren't the one and only that happened. You were an exception to the rule. There were more, right? There were other children being smuggled through US either to Canada or vice versa by MEK, correct?
Absolutely. Like I said, we were around 700 children at that time in Camp Ashraf in Iraq, and all 700 of us were smuggled to Western countries. I would say, I think just an estimate, at least 100 were smuggled to the US and Canada.
Okay, go
The
on. So
majority
we
were
get to
smuggled
Canada.
yeah, the majority were smuggled to Europe, but at least 100 were smuggled to the US. Either they stayed in the US, which I know a lot of, dozens, or they were then and smuggled into Canada. And so I stayed in Canada for almost 7, 8 years with 2 different families. During that time, I didn't have any contact with my parents. I just knew that they were in Iraq. And then one day, a member of the MEK, a woman, came to our house and asked me if I wanted to see my parents. And I said, of course I do. I want to know where they are and how they're doing. And of course, I miss them. And she said, well, if you want to go, then you have to go to Iraq because they can't leave Iraq. And I said, yeah, whatever. I don't care. I just want to see them. So again, at that time, I was 16 years old. Because I was smuggled into Canada, I didn't have any documents. And because I was transferred from one foster family to another, and then my immigration files were not transferred, my case was completely suspended. I was considered a landed immigrant, but I didn't have a passport. So the MEK, again, they smuggled me from Canada, and this time through the Vancouver border to the US. And this is 1998. And then there in the US, I stayed in MEK headquarters and bases in LA and in Virginia for almost 9, 10 months. I was involved in political activity.
I'm gonna pause you here again. You said this was 1998?
1998, yeah.
Okay. Again, just to refresh.
September 1998.
Okay. To refresh everybody's memory, United States of America decided to list MEK. That is not unlist, that is list. MEK was put in the Foreign Terrorist Organization list in America in 1997. 1997, they are listed. In 1998, their active members are again trafficking. This time isn't just a smuggling. This is a trafficking of a 16-year-old into the US, into Los Angeles, and then Virginia. And this is going to take 9 months. I'm going to stop after this so Ray can tell you the rest of it, but these are important to break down. A year and some month after they're listed, they are active inside US. They are trafficking a child because a 16-year-old is still a child. And Ray will tell you the rest of what they made him do, but just keep those dates and gaps in mind as we go through this story. Go ahead, Ray. So you get to LA first.
Yeah, because at that time there was it was September. There was the UN General Assembly in New York, and then there was going to be a big demonstration there. And so then I was taken to New York, and then from New York down to Virginia, where the MEK and NCRI. And it's very important to mention that it's MEK and NCRI headquarters in Virginia. And I stayed there for a couple of months. During that time, I was doing political activity for them. We would go to Congress. We would, hand out flyers. We were also involved in their charity schemes because at that time, and they still do have that. At that time, they had these charity organizations through which they were collecting funds and donations, and then they were portraying the story that we are collecting funds for children whose parents have been executed by the Islamic Republic. Now, these children don't have any parents, and then they're living in refugee camps on the border of Iran and Turkey, and they need food, shelter, and medicine. And we were collecting donations for them. But the reality is that no such camps existed, and no such just taking this money and using it for its political and at that time their military activities in Iraq. I was also.
I am so sorry to keep stopping you, but these are the keys that we have. Okay, so so they are doing the charity fundraising. They are claiming a cause. Did this charity exist on the paper, or is it made up?
No, it did exist on paper.
Okay, but then if I go and track, let's say the name of it was MEK is Lovely, I'm making that up. If I go look up the MEK is Lovely, was that a registered business charity inside US or outside of US?
So we always had these binders, and in these binders there were pictures of like people who were executed, like they were hanging in the streets in Iran. There were torture pictures, and then there was also pictures of children in these refugee camps, like these children you see on the TV, you know. And then there was a couple of like papers that they were like there are valid documents of that we are registered, and but they were photocopied so many times that the quality was so bad you could barely read them. The most important thing was that stamp, and no one was really checking at that time. Like I think authorities and just people in general, they weren't sensitive, and this is all before 9/11 as well. So like even security wise, because I said that I was smuggled a couple of times across the border. I mean, people weren't really paying attention to these things at that time. So, based on what I recollect, I think they were registered inside the US. But
They were
like I said,
that's why I want, because I have looked into all of this. They were, and that's the main key part again. Listed terrorist group active in US, trafficking children, raising money under a registered charity inside US while considered a terrorist group. My lovely audience, you see where we're going with this? Do you see how much of a joke our terrorist lists are? He just gave you 5 steps in less than a year of listing MEK that literally prove to you that these lists mean nothing. Okay, go ahead, continue.
absolutely. And I remember specifically one because at that time I was 16 years old, and so I was young. On one occasion, when I was in the Virginia headquarters of the NCRI, there were members of the like high-ranking members of the NCRI who currently are in the U.S. and they're very active, especially in the media. I accompanied one of them on a trip to Arkansas, where we met. It was a 3-day trip, and we met I think almost a dozen MEK supporters, and we collected money from them. We raised money, and I remember that this man who was currently, I think, the director of NCRI headquarters or NCRI office in the U.S. in Washington. His argument was that, or his story was that we are collecting this money to buy night vision goggles for MEK military teams who are infiltrating into Iran and carrying out military operations. So at the time, like you said, like the MEK was on the terrorist list. Active members of the MEK and who are currently high-ranking members of the NCRI, they were collecting money to send to Iraq and to purchase night vision goggles for their military activities inside Iraq and Iran.
Okay, so we have I don't know where to begin. How many before I go to, we have how many other kids of 16, 17, 15, 11, any age were with you during your 9 months of US and the fundraising and the crowdfunding? Was it just you, or did you have other Iranian kids of MEK with you?
That's a great question. In the MEK headquarters in Virginia, we were almost 20 teenagers from the age of 13 all the way up to 18 and 19. Later on, when I was transferred, I can't say transferred again, I was smuggled out of the US and into Iraq again. I realized that this was a recruiting campaign by the MEK. And the reason that most of us had gone back to Iraq was to see our parents, because that's the promise that they gave us, that we're going back to Iraq to see our parents. And I realized that this was all a recruiting campaign to recruit underage children and bring them into their military ranks. So at that time, we were around 20 children in the MEK base, and they really manipulated us in a way that they created a really warm atmosphere where every day they were taking us out, spending a lot of money on us, and then they were giving us these really fake promises that once you go to Iraq, you're still going to be friends, you're going to see each other every weekend, you're going to go out on the weekends, You can see each other, you can go to clubs, you can party, you can do whatever you want, you know. So like a 16-year-old who grew up in Canada, like the past 8 years, you know, so with that Western mentality, and my friends as well, um, we are now smuggled to the U.S. and I can explain to you, like, they gave me fake passports and then they they transferred me, or they drove me to New York, and then from LaGuardia, I took a flight to the Netherlands, and then from there, I took a flight to Jordan. And then in Jordan, they came and picked me up by car, like a big convoy, a big military convoy. They picked me up and a couple of other people by car, and then they drove me to their base in Baghdad.
Well, of course, what you're describing, Ray, is exactly the definition of grooming. You know, you find teenagers and you give them a certain either 9 months, 6 months, 2 years, sometimes 8 years of this myth, this bubble of lies. And when they're ready to accept the lies and become an activated soldier like yourself, then you just transfer them. I hate the fact that we're not completely out of time, but we're almost out of time. But I wanna stay with your childhood. I want you to take us from now. You're 16. You were 16 when you arrived in Iraq. When they took you back, you were 16.
It was 2 weeks after my 17th birthday when I arrived in exactly
No,
2 weeks.
I'm sorry. So you were 16 when you got back to Iraq?
No, so when I was 16, they recruited me and then they smuggled me into the US. I was there for about 9 months. And then when
So
I
you're about
turned 2 weeks after
17
I
now.
turned 17, they transferred, or they smuggled me to Iraq.
Okay, got it. Sorry, my math is so off today. So that makes sense. So you get to Iraq as a 17-year-old boy who basically, technically, mainly grew up in Canada and then went through 9 months of, let's say, grooming in US, and now you arrive in Iraq. What do you face? You just arrived. You're supposed to be welcomed with open arms and go clubbing and have girlfriends. But what did you actually face when you got there?
A very strict, um, very uh, very strict military cult, very strict Islamic cult with completely military-based collective lifestyle, which in some aspects goes into Marxism and communism. So it's a complete mixture of an Islamic, a religious Islamic and Marxist lifestyle, which was completely new to me, and it was a big shock because I immediately realized that well, first of all, I was promised to go see my mother and father, but I realized that my father had passed away or had died 4 years before, and they never told me that. They lied to me. They told me that because I specifically asked about him, and they said he's alive, he's waiting for you. But once I got there, they said, oh, my mother told me that he had passed away, which that in itself is a lie. We can get to that maybe some other time because eventually I realized that's the
No,
MEK.
let's get to it right now. Tell my audience. They told you he died of heart attack, right?
Absolutely. My mom told me that my father had passed away, and he died of a heart attack in his sleep. During my entire time in the MEK, I was in the MEK for 18 years because once you fall in, there's no way out. You're stuck in a camp, confined. There, you have, apart from the physical boundaries and borders and the fences and barbed wires that exist, there's also the aspect of brainwashing and the conditioning and, you know, and the ideas that they plant into your mind, specifically through the use of religion and Islam specifically. I spent 18 years in the MEK, and during that entire 18 years, I always thought that my father had passed away. I always asked to see his grave, and then they would always come up with excuses that, yeah, his grave is somewhere in Iraq where we can't go. It's too dangerous, stuff like that. My mother didn't, she never really wanted to talk about my dad. Every time the topic came up, she's like, yeah, you should go ask your aunt. And when I asked my aunts, they would say, yeah, you should go ask your mom. And eventually, once I left the MEK, I started to do my own research. And then I came up, I saw his name in a few human rights reports. There was a big report in 2005, which is called No Exit by Human Rights Watch. And then there I realized for the first time that my father had been interrogated, tortured, and murdered by MEK members in Camp Ashraf.
Well, and here's the interesting part. We have talked off air a few times. I watched your interview with Brannon. As you know, I'm about to publish a Substack based on your story and the child trafficking of MEK. But every time I hear you say this very last sentence, I just sit here and I think, how can anyone, left or right, Muslim or not, how can anyone in any shape or form sit there for a second and endorse this group? Which is important to say, when all of this was happening to you, Rajavis were the leaders of MEK, correct?
So
today, Rajavis are still the leaders of this cult. I want my audience to understand. This is the same story of regime has changed its way during Khatami versus MEK. The leadership is the same. I have said it, Ray, many times. I have people who say, listen, you were a child and you had some bad experiences in your childhood in Islamic Republic of Iran, but things have changed. Your story belongs to 30-some years ago. And I'm like, has it? It's the same thing for you. When somebody tells me like, well, no, my heart goes out to Ray, but MEK has changed their way. I'm like, are you sure they have? Where's your proof? Because I have the proof they haven't. Do you have the proof that Maryam Rajavi has stopped manipulation, lies, grooming? Now, let me tie this. And of course, you're going to come back, right? You're going to come back on my show so we can talk more about this. But for today's conclusion, let me ask you this. The manipulation they used against you and 100 other kids to be smuggled out of Iraq, and then the 20 kids in the headquarters of MEK in Virginia, and on, how much of that manipulation, the lies and the grooming, is taking place today towards Republican legislators, lawmakers, and former officials of America, Ray?
Absolutely. The thing is, when it comes to the MEK, I mean, they've been, I think it's over a decade now, or even a little bit more, that they're actively involved in a rebranding campaign. You know, they're trying to distance themselves from the image of the MEK. You know, these rebels wearing military uniforms with AK-47s in deserts and on tanks and fighting the regime, to, you know, people wearing suits and ties and glasses and shaving their mustaches, their communist mustaches, and coming in front of Western media and saying, yeah, we have Maryam Rajavi's 10-point plan, which she promises, you know, all these great things. But the reality is that the structure of the MEK, the organizational structure of the MEK is still intact, and it has not changed. As you know, currently they live in Albania. In Albania, they've constructed, they built a camp exactly like Camp Ashraf, the camp that they had in Iraq, exactly identical to that. And these individuals, these members, who are currently around 2,000, a little less, are living in there with the same conditions. You know, there's barbed wires around, there's fences around their camp. They're not allowed to leave their camp. I know of their conditions. I recently spoke to someone who's recently come out of the camp. I know exactly what their conditions are, and nothing has changed. You know, it's still the same rules. They still have these manipulation tactics, these ideological meetings, in which through which they brainwash people, and so nothing has changed. And so these politicians, these Western politicians, specifically these Republicans, who come and do paid speeches for the MEK, either they're really not doing their own research, you know, and they're trusting in what they're hearing from the MEK, because the MEK's lobby teams are very, very strong. They've been active. They've been going up and down the aisles of Congress for over 4 decades. So they have all the connections. They know all the people, and either they're falling for that and they're not doing their own research, or they're not listening to people like me, people who've defected the MEK and are speaking out. And to be honest with you, there aren't so many like me. The majority of my friends, I have hundreds of friends who have defected the MEK, but none of them are willing to talk because they're afraid. They're afraid of the consequences for themselves, for their lives. First of all, they're ashamed to say that they were in the MEK. They see that as a dark stain on their reputation, specifically in the Iranian community. And secondly, majority of them still have family inside the MEK, and so do I. I have my mother, and I have aunts, and I have more relatives inside the MEK. And they don't want their relatives inside the MEK to be pressured by the MEK because of their activities. But majority are keeping quiet. I think there's less than a handful of us who are actually speaking out. So yeah, I think these Republicans or these Western politicians, specifically those in America, they need to sit down and listen to people like me who have firsthand experience. It's half of my life, almost 18 years. And even before that, as a child, I've spent more than half of my life in the MEK, in their headquarters in the US and Canada and Europe, and also in Iraq, in their military system. I've been in their financial department, I've been in their political departments, I've been in their recruiting departments. I know them completely. They need to sit down and listen to my side of the story, or our side of the story, and to truly understand who the MEK is from the inside, and not the image or the brand that they're creating on the outside. And I think that's the big problem here. And that's one of my goals, and that's one of the reasons that I speak out, because the world needs to hear the truth. And these politicians who are, I would say, naively supporting the MEK currently, they need to hear the truth and understand who the MEK truly is, and how dangerous their organization and structure, and specifically their ideologies.
Tonight on the Worldview Report, Mike Benz flags a bombshell in the latest Epstein files. The CIA's partial denial of records that could finally force Congress to declassify any hidden intelligence ties. Then IT firms, they're using coded job ads to block American workers and favor cheap foreign visa holders. Next, ICE arrest, they reveal illegal aliens serving as armed police officers in multiple states. How many more are there? And then up north, Canada's so-called voluntary gun buyback, they're threatening law-abiding owners with up to 5 years in prison for non-compliance. And in Minnesota, border czar Tom Homan pulls 700 agents after unprecedented local jail cooperation. And then finally, our commentary. Can America's center hold amid fractured friendships and political warfare? All that and more as the Worldview Report begins right now.
This is Worldview Report with host Brandon House. Whether it is news from the nation's capital or your state capital, from the classroom to the boardroom, from national security to national and local news that impacts you and your family, Worldview Report is your trusted source for vital and uncensored news. And now, here is Brandon House.
Good evening and welcome to the Worldview Report. I'm Brandon House. We have a stunning development in the ongoing Jeffrey Epstein saga, one that could finally crack open the deep mysteries surrounding this convicted sex offender and his shadowy connections. According to a bombshell detail that's been flagged by former State Department official Mike Benz, the CIA's response to Epstein's own Freedom of Information Act request back in 2011, well, it points to classified ties that the agency is desperate to keep hidden. As reported by the Daily Caller News Foundation, the Department of Justice just released over 3 million pages of Epstein-related records, and that was on Friday, including this eye-opening CIA document. Ben, speaking on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast last Tuesday, he called it a bombshell that demands immediate action from Congress. Here's the crux. Epstein, who wasn't even a public figure until around 2001 or 2002, had his lawyer file a Freedom of Information Act with the CIA for their records on himself as far back as 1999. So fast forward to 2011. And the CIA's response, well, it's telling. Mike Benz, he paraphrased it this way. We have received your request for your client Jeffrey Epstein's record search under the Freedom of Information Act. We've granted the request to search for all open and acknowledged...
Live up to its responsibility towards R2P, responsibility to protect. The Iranian people are currently being slaughtered by a regime that cannot protect, that cannot and will not protect its own people, but it's actually massacring and slaughtering its own people. This is the responsibility of the international community, as they have done before, to get involved and to save the lives of the people from its own government. So this has nothing to do with another invasion, another war or anything like that. This is completely human rights related. This is the responsibility of international bodies, specifically the United Nations. And this is how Western and specifically foreign policy around the world works. After the Second World War, all the countries in the world, they sat down and they came up with rules and regulations and conventions for those atrocities to never happen again. And so on behalf of the Iranian people, I speak to the people of in the United States of America, and I said that we do not want to drag you in another war. That's the last thing we would want anyone to do. I speak to you and say that we are asking the international community led by Donald Trump and the United States to live up to their responsibility to protection, the United Nations Charter, and to support the Iranian people in their quest for freedom inside Iran. We want to be able to live exactly as you guys live in the United States. We want to have the same freedoms. And that's the only way that's possible is through the international community intervening and actually supporting and helping the Iranian people.
Amen. I couldn't have said it better myself. Ray, I know you're mainly active on X. Give us your X handle for those of my audience who want to go follow you on X.
It's Ray Torabi, Torabi 8.
Perfect. I appreciate you being here. I will get in touch with you immediately. Keep up the good work. I know you're already strong, but stay strong even those moments when it's hard. And I look forward to having you back on the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And to my lovely audience, I don't know what to tell you. I think education is key. Witnesses, eyewitnesses, testimonies, people who have been through it should be a reliable source, way over a bunch of Congress bill and Congress endorsement and military members and yada, yada. Again, this isn't about me, but it is about me. Go to my Substack. The last 3 Substack I have released, from Qatar City to the Congress bill I just went over, to names of those who supported MEK to be removed. I know we sit here and say Hillary Clinton is the reason MEK was removed from the terrorist list, but read my Substack, because I show you, the receipt is right there, that in 2005, a group of conservatives, Republicans, former CIA, Claire Lopez, former military, General McInerney, I can never say his name right. They all got together in 2005 and put a testimony in front of Congress defending MEK, its actions, whitewashing, brushing off under the rug. So way before Hillary came to rescue, way before Obama DOJ removed the MEK from the terrorist list in 2012, in 2005, Republican officials or former officials of America started to lobby for MEK. Please snap out of the cult of two-party and start paying attention. Again, even if this isn't about the Iranian people, this is about the future of America. These are the type of people, your representatives and my representative, because 4 of them are from Ohio. Trust me, I'm in contact with them. My representatives and your representatives are endorsing, taking money from, and lobbying from. Imagine the day that comes when MEK wants more power in America. Imagine that day. It is the very end of our show. I'm grateful that we were able to go over. I will have a show tomorrow. I have a special guest joining me tomorrow for another great discussion from the inside of GOP, nonetheless. And remember, cyruswellness.com, lutfstudio.com, and liveuptofreedom.substack.com. These are the 3 places that you can financially support my work, and I really need those financial supports. It's been busy, it's been hectic, it's been exhausting, and bills are piling up. So head over to any of those options and support me if you can. If you cannot, I understand. Just share the message, spread the word, and until tomorrow, you stay safe, stay vigilant. Bye, guys.
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries,